Good morning, everyone. Today we have with us Pastor Mark Moss from the Lutheran Heritage Foundation. As you see the various pamphlets on the table, all stuff that help talk to the mission of LHF, Lutheran Heritage Foundation. He's going to be with us to talk a little bit more about that. So without further ado, I'd like to hand the mic over to Pastor Moss.
Can you hear me? Okay. I'm going to move this a little bit further forward so I don't feel like I'm in the back row. And yeah, good Lutherans, right? We're all there. If I wasn't a pastor, I'd probably be in the back row too. Okay, see what we got. Let's go back. And Pastor, take off. Look, ask him. Okay, so some of you maybe have come and you're going to the late service. I'll reintroduce myself a little bit. I'm Mark Moss. I'm the full-time mission speaker for Lutheran Heritage Foundation. I have a lot of fond memories from this area, by the way. I'll explain those to you in a minute. And I travel around the entire country speaking at churches to raise support for our organization. We're a registered service organization of the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. That's like having the good housekeeping stamp of approvals, as I said during the announcements. But we have to raise our own support. We are not in the budget of the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. Wouldn't that be nice? But we serve them. We do something that they wouldn't otherwise be able to do. But do you know who this is? This is the bishop and Päivi Räsänen on the right. She's a former parliament member of the Finnish parliament. He is the head pastor. He's like Harrison in the Lutheran church over there, and they are our partner church. Now, just so happens that Päivi wrote a book, and he was the editor for it, this book, okay? It's basically, it says, male and female, he created them. Homosexual relationships challenge the Christian concept of humanity by Päivi Räsänen. About 2014, we published this book for them, but it was in Finnish then, of course. And they began to distribute it, and someone picked it up who didn't like it. And they got taken to court on hate speech charges. They won their first case. Well, there is no double jeopardy law over there in Finland. They can go to court as many times as they want to and keep on running after these people. So they took him to court a second time. Päivi and the bishop won their case, declared innocent of hate speech. I just saw recently they are now at a third court, and they're taking them to court again. I have no doubt this will reach the European courts, folks. They're going after them. They don't want that book out there. We have a copy of that book right here. We have a copy of another book called Sharing the Faith with Your Muslim Friends, The Do's and Don'ts by Reverend Bernie Lutz. He lives south of St. Paul, Minnesota. I live south of Minneapolis. And he was a missionary for us to Papua New Guinea a long time ago. And so we have those two books, and we have this book. We'll talk a little bit more about this book in the presentation, but it's God's Word for You. It's a devotion book, which is really appropriate for about ages 10 through 16 or 17. It's a good book for family devotions, especially for families that, you know, maybe you think, I'm not a good enough theologian to do devotions or something, right? Some fathers and mothers struggle with doing it because they don't feel like they're good enough. We'll explain why this is a really good book for that. But we're going to have a drawing for those at the end of the presentation, about 5 minutes before the end. By the way, Pastor, when do we need to be done?
10 o'clock.
10 o'clock. Okay. First, the person who wins first prize will get their choice of these 3 books. Spread them out here. And second prize will get their choice of whatever's left over. And you'll also get one of these purses, which our missionary Ted Nothong brought back from Thailand, if you win first or second prize. But what you need to do if you're interested is you would have to sign up for the newsletter. A lot of you, now we've got 2 yellow cards out there. Some of them look different than this. If you sign up for the newsletter, we'll then take your yellow card and we'll put them in a pile and we'll draw from them for the drawing for the books. What you need to know about us is we do not sell our newsletter list of names or share it with anyone. We're not like some organizations. If you sign up for our newsletter, you're not going to start getting information from 20 other organizations of the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod because you signed up for our newsletter. That's not going to happen. But you'd have to turn this in when it comes time for the drawing, and we'll collect them up and we'll draw from these yellow cards. Let's keep rolling. All right, who are we? Well, as you all know, I was an Army chaplain, and I understand they've gotten rid of this course, but I had to take a course called CAS Cube at Leavenworth. My son got out of it. He's a major now. He's lucky. The first thing they say is you have to have an outline slide, and it can only have 6 bullet points. Don't count, please. There's my outline slide. I did not meet the Army standard. All right. A little bit about myself. Before I went into the Army, I was a missionary for Lutheran Bible translators over in Sierra Leone, West Africa, a Bible translator, 1990 to 1993. In 1992, something happened in the United States. It was called the LA riots. So you never heard about us, who on the very same day as the LA riots had a major military coup in Sierra Leone, West Africa. Then they performed, 10th Group out of Germany, Special Forces performed what's called a NEO, a non-combatant evacuation operation. It was called Silver Anvil, and they sent in C-130s and C-141s, and they collected us up. There was about 500 of us and evacuated us from the country. Well, it seemed like things were settling down a little bit, so we went back around Christmas time of 1992, but then it started to heat up again, and who's heard of the movie Blood Diamonds? Okay, that's a fictional plot, but everything you saw in that movie is what was going on. It simply got too dangerous to stay there by the summer of '93, so I took my wife and my 4 children, ages about 4 to 12, and we came back to the States and we began looking for another job. And they were in turmoil for about 10 or 11 years there. They have settled down now since then. So I found a job, Army chaplain. Signed on in 1995, I went to Officer Basic, and I stayed in until January of 2015 and got my 20 in. I deployed twice to Iraq, once outside Ramadi, once outside Tikrit at Cobb Spiker, and Fob Junction City. And it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it, folks. Back in the early days, I told your pastor, before the wars started in 2003, if you took a hardship tour to South Korea for a year, you got your first choice of assignments as a chaplain. So I took a hardship tour in 1998 to South Korea, and they said, where do you want to go? I said, I want to go to Lutherland. Where else would a good Lutheran pastor want to go? So we got a 3-year tour there with our family the first time. We went back about 10 years later, my wife and I, by ourselves, and that was even more fun. But I got to go to all the Luther sites there. I got to preach in the Castle Church right here. I got to preach in the town church, St. Marian Church, also, where Luther preached some 2,000 sermons. I love a good schnitzel, and I love the Autobahn. If you've been in the military, you know they will ship a car of your choice to Germany for you if it's in good repair. Guess what I shipped? 2005 Mustang GT. It had a top-end governor of 145. It was limited to 145. We took the governor off. Don't ask, because I'm not telling. I had a blast there, folks. And then 2015 came, and it was time to retire. So I joined the Office of International Missions for the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. I signed on as what's called a theological educator. That means you are positioned in a country at their seminary, and you are a professor for their up-and-coming students who are becoming pastors. I taught briefly in Nigeria, and then I was sent to Ghana. And we taught in the villages in Ghana in the Northeast. We went to where they were at. And that was a lot of fun. I got out of there in 2017, took a church in Mount Calvary in Richfield, Minnesota. And when I got to Mount Calvary in Richfield, Minnesota in about 2019, as their pastor, they had a project they just completed. The previous pastor, Mark Johnson, working with a native Mahdi speaker of Mount Calvary, had completed the Mahdi Catechism in the Mahdi language of northwestern Uganda. Now, it's sitting on their hard drive, and they didn't know what to do with it, and I didn't know what to do with it. When you hear the term Lutheran Heritage Foundation, doesn't that sound like a historical institute? So I talk around to my friends and say, how do I get this printed? They said, you go to Lutheran Heritage Foundation. Oh, it's really not a historical institute. It's a translation organization. And we got the Mahdi Catechism printed back in about 2020 or 2019. And there you see the Mahdi people in northwestern Uganda holding up their Mahdi catechism. Then I thought, well, you know, in 1992, there's that year again, 1992, when I was still in the country, and I should have pulled this out of my briefcase, they completed another catechism that had been sitting on their computer hard drive for, I don't know if I'll find it here, but I had a copy, but I've just got a new copy. Let me look. We'll find it later. Anyhow, the Mahdi had completed in 1992 the Conal Catechism, and it's called the Small Catechism. It's called the Enchiridion, which means it's without the explanation, so it's a little bit bigger than this Jesus Never Fails packet here. So I went back to Lutheran Heritage Foundation, and I think by then I was on their board of directors, and I said, can we print this? Because my church had saved up $10,000 to print the Small Catechism. They said, sure. And about 3 years ago, we got it printed, we got it distributed and dedicated and everything. And now the Conal Lutheran Church, whom the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod planted back in the 80s, now has Luther's Catechism in their language. I thought that was pretty cool. So when the job came to become their full-time speaker, I signed on. So this is not about me, this is about us. Who are we? Not who am me. We are a translation organization. Now, in 1992, there's that year again, folks. You're going to keep on hearing it. In 1992, and that's not Robert Ron there in the leather jacket or anything, okay? But Robert Ron was in Red Square in Moscow. Now remember, the wall comes down what year? 89. So by 92, you can travel freely to Russia. He's in Red Square in Moscow. He's handing out Russian language Bibles, and it occurs to him, they need more than just a Bible in their language. That's when he founded, in the basement of his home, Lutheran Heritage Foundation, who, by the power of the Holy Spirit, we now have been translating, publishing, distributing, and introducing books that are Bible-based, Christ-centered, and Reformation-driven around the world. And you heard the numbers during the presentation. You'll hear them again if you're coming to the late service. We now have a headquarters building in Macomb, Michigan, about a 45-minute drive northeast of Detroit is where our headquarters is at. We to date have published Luther's Small Catechism in over 170 languages. I cannot get them on that screen. In about 100 countries. This, by the way, is Sierra Leone, which has a place in my heart, is right there. It's about 4/5 the size of the state of Maine. Now, if you have a question along the way here, just ask it, okay? But why books? This is the day of, who's got a cell phone? Who's got a cell phone? I left mine in the office. Can I borrow yours, ma'am? I'll give it back. This is the day of the almighty cell phone, right? And cell phone apps. Why don't we just have a cell phone app for the Small Catechism and distribute it that way? It sounds pretty good at first. But in many parts of the world today, okay, is this being broadcast? Okay, in some closed countries today, they're not so much checking your luggage for books as they are checking your cell phones for Christian apps. So it makes sense to carry a book with you if you're bringing a Christian book back to a closed country that you maybe have come from. Books are lasting and teach for generation. You're not going to give me your cell phone just because you've got an app on it I want, but you might give me a book also. In many parts of the world, books are a luxury, and a book from Lutheran Heritage Foundation is the first, if not the only book that many families may own. And in areas where Christianity is illegal and or the internet is blocked, and I might say monitored, small books are easily concealed and read in privacy. And I'm going to pass around a book from one of those situations. And you'll see the country. I never mention the name of the country that's on the cover in a presentation. Why do we do it? Why do we do what we do? Well, we do it because of the second part of the Great Commission. You've got the first part, the go ye therefore part, but how about the second part? Teaching them, bringing them up in the faith to observe all things whatsoever I have commanded you. That's what our books do. Think about Philip and the Ethiopian eunuch. He's trucking down the road in his chariot, and Now, Philip can see him, and I'm pretty certain Philip didn't know what scroll he was reading from, but he was reading from a scroll, and Philip just says to him, for the opportunity to get to talk to him, do you understand what you're reading? What does the eunuch say? How can I unless? Someone tells me, someone explains it, right? So he hops up, he's reading from the prophet Isaiah. I'm pretty sure he explains to him the prophet Isaiah, but then some more, because down the road, the Ethiopian eunuch becomes a baptized new believer in Jesus Christ. So, the question down there is, all we need the Bible. We all know how important the Bible is, but our organization helps teach the Bible with the books we publish. So, you could think of Philip as the first catechism. What do we call him? We call him a catechist. A catechism can do the same thing as Philip can do the same thing as a catechism. There's your first catechism in the flesh. All right. So why do we do it? I've actually heard this from some of my evangelical friends. Aren't catechisms just a Lutheran thing? I'm sorry. Other churches don't have catechisms. Why do we need one? Well, first of all, the word catechism sometimes scares some people. It sounds too high church. It sounds too liturgical. And so when they hear the word catechism, if they haven't been raised in the Lutheran or maybe the Presbyterian or Methodist tradition, they don't like the word. Well, actually, the word catechism comes from the Latin and Greek. It's a loan word. Greek loaned it to us. We took it and made it our own. But in the Greek, it means book of instruction. That's all it meant. Anyone got a Ford F-150 here? You could have a catechism on how to repair your Ford F-150. A book of instruction. You could have a catechism on how to do crocheting, which my wife loves doing. Okay? It's not a bad word. We don't have to use the word catechism. We could just call it Luther's Book of Instruction with explanation, but we use the word catechism. Other churches don't have catechisms, so why do we need one? Are we really sure that other churches don't have catechisms? John Calvin and what? The Heidelberg Catechism. The Church of England has the Westminster Confession of Faith and Catechism. I even found a Baptist church that calls their book of Christian instruction a catechism. Not to be outdone by the Protestants, guess who else has a catechism? Folks, a lot of churches have a catechism, and a lot of churches call them catechism. Let's keep rolling. Aren't catechisms kind of heretical? Why do we do it? Some people who don't understand what a catechism is, when they see that I have a catechism, I've actually had my friends who are evangelicals raise these points I've just raised in this slide and the last one. I've got a good friend that we go for coffee every Saturday morning. He raised these questions. This is not made up in my mind. And a lot of them think that this is we think this is some new revelation from God. So you got the Old Testament, you got the New Testament, and then they think that we think, and then you got this latest revelation from God, catechisms. Well, okay, they don't understand what a catechism is. So there's 974 pericopes in this book. A pericope can be 1, 2, 3, 4. It can be a full lesson for your sermon. I would estimate that there's probably some 2,000 Bible verses in this. Probably about a third of this is pure Scripture, the original Old and New Testament. The rest of it is just a structure of questions and answers to help you understand the Scripture. And it's put into that format to teach the Christian faith. Catechism is not a bad thing. And it's definitely not like, these books are considered new revelation from God. The catechism is not this. All right, let's keep rolling. Why do we do it? Well, think about our traditions and our history. In 1517, Martin Luther nails the 95 Theses to the Wittenberg. It's not Wittenberg. Who's been to Germany? You know it's not Wittenberg, right? It's Wittenberg. Castle Church doors. In 1522, he's written a number of books by that point in time. And so he is called, and he's being accused of heresy. He's called before the emperor in the city of Worms. It's called the Diet of Worms. And they take his books, and he's up there. He wants to share it with them and defend himself. They simply take the books, about 25 of them, put them on a table in front of Luther and say, you need to renounce those books. That's heresy. And that's when Luther has his famous, here I stand, I can do no other, I can't deny those books speech. So he leaves there. Shortly after he leaves there, they come to another decision. There is now a price on Luther's head. He can be captured. And if you capture him, you can put him to death on sight. So his friends kidnap him. They take him to the Wartburg Castle, and they squirrel him away there for about 10 months in hiding. He doesn't go right back to Wittenberg. In his first 2 months, he translates from the Greek into the German the New Testament. Then he finally returns after a little less than a year to Wittenberg. And in 1525, the Lutheran Church is growing. They have a meeting. What is the state of this new Lutheran church? So in 1527, they perform the Saxon Visitation. They send out trained pastors and professors to check on these churches. What do they find? They find some churches where the pastor is not even conducting worship services. They find some churches where not just the people, but the pastor cannot recite the Lord's Prayer, the Ten Commandments, or the Apostles' Creed. And this is actually, I found this in a book. They did find one church where the pastor was making his living brewing beer. So, got some problems, some issues here. Got to do something about it. So what they could do from Wittenberg was Luther sat down and he said, we need to develop books of Christian instruction. That's when he penned and they printed the Small Catechism in May of 1529, the large in April of 1529. And then they pushed these out, this one primarily for the laity, this one primarily for the clergy. They pushed them out to the pastors and people so they could become learned about the new Lutheran Christian faith. Let's keep rolling. Why do we do it? Well, we do it because in many parts of the world today, there is still a lot of spiritual darkness. So, I lived among the Limba people, but in order to live among them, they had 14 chiefdoms. I was there to have a New Testament that had been done for the Western chiefdoms and look at it and test it among the other 12 chiefdoms to see if it could be used. There was complaints that they couldn't understand each other because the Western chiefdoms, it's like a Y. The two Western chiefdoms were separated by mountains, and over time, the dialects diverged, and so the 12 to the east and south thought they couldn't use the New Testament we completed with LBT. So we went out and we did a massive translation and linguistic survey, and but I had to have a place to live during this whole thing. So there was this village called Bumban, and I had to get permission to work in his chiefdom and live in his chiefdom. So I had to go see the paramount chief. There's the paramount chief. I studied up on him a little bit before I went to visit with him and get permission to live in the village of Bumban in the Biliwat chiefdom, which he was the chief of. I found out in my studies about him, he raised 1/3 of his family Christian, 1/3 in Islam, and 1/3 in the old traditional religion. What's he trying to do? Cover all the bases, make everybody happy. Maybe one of those groups is the right group and he can ride their shirt tails to heaven. So he gave us permission, we started to work there. One day the elders come down to my house and they say, can you keep your children away from this? Now I thought this was a well with a lid on top to keep little children from falling into it. But it's a shrine. And they explained to me there is a sacred rock inside this little clay house. It's been blessed by the local witch doctor, who in that culture was the blacksmith, to bring blessing or something like that to the town. So I guess my children must have been either going up and leaning on it when they rode their bikes around town, or maybe peeking under the lid, and we told them to stay away from it. One year the rains came too hard. So this is what we're combating, is what I'm saying here. This is called traditional religion. We used to call it animism. That is considered politically incorrect. So we call it traditional religion. It is the belief, and this is an oversimplification, that spirits will inhabit localities or like a rock or a tree or something, and you have to offer sacrifices to and pray to these lesser gods to win the favor of the bigger god on some mountain outside of town. And that is a gross oversimplification. Traditional religion, and it still exists in many parts of the world today. So, one year, now there was a Christian presence in this town. There's a little blue and white building here. You'll see a picture of it, a better one later. One year the rains came too heavy. It was washing the rice out of the rice paddies, threatening to destroy the crop. So what do? Well, in their time of need, they didn't turn to the nominal Christian presence. They turned back again to the witch doctor He put together what's called a fetish or charm. It's a basket here with tassels on. He blessed it, and this is to ward off evil spirits and protect the rice. It is strategically placed, to say the least. This is hanging on a branch over my truck, which is on the bridge, which is over the river where the water is rushing through and destroying the rice. I don't recall that it worked. But this is a reason why we do it. In many parts of the world today, people are still living in the spiritual darkness of traditional religions. Let's keep rolling. You said 10 o'clock, right, Pastor? Okay. And we're not just doing that. We're helping regain lost ground after communism has left. Okay? Many of the former communist countries, Estonia, Latvia, and so forth, when communism took over, they destroyed their churches. They might have just used it for a barn or used it for an office building. And the communists took all the Bibles, all the hymnals, all the theology books, all the catechisms into the centers of town, and they burned them, and they burned the pastors' libraries. So now we are going back into some of these East European countries and helping resupply the books they lost under communism. Why do we do it? Well, we do it because we have a world challenge. We need to strengthen the Christian church in the faith and in its outreach because you've got Islam. When I left Bumbon in 1993, I saw a few of these minuets in the north of the country of Sierra Leone. When I returned some 27 years later, Islam had exploded. This is a very aggressive false religion. They are working very hard to expand. They do so in some very creative ways, too. And they are pushing down into West Africa. Now, I say they exploded, but so did Christianity. And they need books. Let's keep going. Why do we do it? Well, this is a good news story. In many places of the world, we have been doing it. And we've been blessed. We've been spreading the gospel. There are 4 countries here. I'll just talk about Nigeria. The Missouri Synod went into Nigeria in about 1924 and began doing church planting. Now, today, Nigeria is bigger than we are. Their national church, the Lutheran Church in Nigeria, which we are in fellowship with, has 2.5 million members. We have 1.9. But there are a number of different languages in that church body. I would estimate somewhere between 7 to 10, and they don't have the books they need for their pastors and for their people. So we are giving them books, and the books we give, by the way, overseas and stateside are free. Let's keep rolling. Why do we do it? Well, there's some places in the world today where you can teach Christianity in not just Christian schools, but public schools. They don't have the separation of church and state. And if you're in an area of a country that's heavily Christian, you can provide Christian books to the superintendent or principal or teachers in that school, and they can teach it right in the public school system. Why do we do it? We do it because we can do it economically. I haven't checked out the recent price, but I would say that a child's garden of Bible stories, don't know if I have a copy of it here. Well, you can see it there. In English, probably costs close to $20 from Concordia Publishing House. From Amazon 3 years ago, it cost $13. For $20 today, we can produce in a foreign language a child's garden of Bible stories, 4 of them for $20. A book like that. We have good resources. We have people supporting us. We found a good publisher in Thailand, also one in Accra, Ghana, and they produce good quality books and at a very, very reasonable price. So a gift to us goes a long ways. $20, 4 of those. Let's keep rolling. Why do we do it? Well, if you walk into your pastor's office, I'm pretty certain you're going to see a few books. Same for my office. In many parts of the world today, pastors don't have the books they need to study for and write good sermons or study for and teach good Bible studies. Some can carry their entire library in a white plastic bag. Why do we do it? I'm going to hope this one works. We'll see if it does. If it does, we're going to let it speak for itself. Can you hear it? Yeah, I can't turn it up here. Over that, is that there a remote? You can still hear it, right? A little bit. Okay, this little boy is in Ethiopia. He's speaking the Amharic language. He's reading in Amharic a child's garden of Bible stories, Old and New Testament stories in his language. I don't know about you, but to me that really warms my heart to see that he can do that. Let's keep rolling. That'll be the only slide of sound, by the way. Why do we do it? Here is the ultimate why do we do it. We do it for Christ and Him crucified and risen again. We do it for the Great Commission. We do it for the words of John chapter 12, verse 32. When I am lifted up, I will draw all peoples, and that is all languages also, unto myself. All right, where are we at? We are in places, let's skip this slide. We're in places like, let me get this out, places like India. Now, I was in Germany. I'm going to open this up here. I was in Germany about two years ago. I was there for Wittenberg English Ministry, but I had Sundays through Tuesdays off, and I was going to English services sponsored by the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod around Germany, and I went to one in the Czech Republic. At the one in Germany, Trinity in Frankfurt, I read this slide, and the result was interesting. Though Hinduism has a reputation as a peaceful religion, check recent headlines, and you'll see that Christians in India face intense persecution. The main persecutors are Hindu extremist groups, local governments, and nationalist Hindus who seek to purify India by making it entirely Hindu. They view Christian converts as traitors to the homeland. Our Indian brothers and sisters in Christ need our prayers as they face their churches being demolished and burned, worship gatherings disrupted, their Christian literature confiscated, burned, pastors beaten and jailed. Christians are often arrested and held for up to 3 weeks after being falsely accused of forcing Hindus to convert to Christianity. For Christians who feel isolated and alone, catechisms and devotions bring God's comfort and peace. LHF has translated the small catechism into 8 different languages of India. I read that. In front of me was the parents of the AV guy for this church, Trinity in Frankfurt. He was from India, but he was there on a green card working for some major corporation. His parents came every year on a 3-month visa to visit their son. The father raises his hand and he says, what you need to know is everything you read is exactly true. Less than 3% of the population in India is Christian, and the persecution is intense. And our books do bring comfort and hope. Another slide here. Bing. How about Vietnam? There is a 2018 Vietnam law on belief and religion which criminalizes faith-based activities the government has not approved of in advance, thus eliminating a gray area in which house churches have been largely tolerated. The religion law not only makes fellowships illegal, but is used to prohibit church leaders from making visits to homes to lead services, according to the U.S. State Department. So, just so it turns out that Lutheran Hour Ministries has been approved of in advance to produce eyeglasses. And they have an eyeglass clinic with free eyeglasses for the poor. Lutheran Heritage Foundation has also been approved of in advance. And so we print Jesus Never Fails in the Vietnamese language. When they come to Lutheran Hour Ministries to get their eyeglasses, they have to test it. And they are given, in Vietnamese, a little booklet, Jesus Never Fails, to test it. And they get to keep it and take it home. God has a way. All right. This is a school that we provided books to in northeastern Ghana. It's run by Reverend Nicholas Salafu, who has his doctorate degree from our St. Louis Seminary. He has 1,000 students, and he has the best education program among the Kusal people in his part of the country. That's a language. Turns out that half of them come from Islamic homes. Their parents want a good education, and they are sent to this Christian school, and they are taught Christianity. Out of that 1,000, 500 are Islamic, 500 are Christian. Folks, God has a way. 21% of the households in our country today speak another language. These are the major languages. And since we're getting short on time, you can obviously tell Spanish is the biggest one with 42 million speakers. We have printed Luther's Catechism in 31 languages, A Child's Garden of Bible Stories in 18 languages, a number of other ones. Jesus Never Fails, that gospel tract in front of you, in 25 languages. We've done a lot of work in the Spanish language. We've helped them publish a hymnal. Let's skip past this. Here we go. We helped them get out the Lutheran hymnal to South America, Central America. It is now available to Hispanic services in our country. We've also done work among the Islamic languages like Dari and Farsi. This will be close to one of the last stories I tell. I'm not seeing it here. Okay, don't know where it went, but that book in the center, I've got a copy of it. When I was being courted for this job, my boss knew that I was in Germany to help my son move home from Hohenfels, Germany. He said, and I was headed to Wittenberg, he said, stop by Leipzig and see the work the Missouri Synod is doing. So I did. I get to Leipzig, Germany. They have a massive outreach program there. It's being operated out of a storefront in downtown because initially people of the Islam faith won't come to a church. And they then walked me up in the bell tower of St. Lucas Church in town and showed me boxes of books, boxes of this book. They pulled out one, and I brought it home. Is this it? Yeah, it's here. I'm going to pass this around. Here's a Child's Garden of Bible Stories in Farsi. This goes this way. I'll put this this way. I picked this up in that bell tower. This is the exact book, and I brought it home. I've had it ever since then. And they are using this to bring people to faith in Christ. That is one of the tools they use. We provide them with it. Let's keep rolling. All right. God's Word for you. I said I'd say something about this. This is a great devotion book for families because it tells the story, Old or New Testament. It explains the gospel. It has a Bible verse with words of hope, and it places that story on a timeline. It's a great tool to do family devotions with. We have a VBS program. These are our guys that work the 3 regions of the world, but we actually use national workers in the countries now. We don't have missionaries doing it, and we always do it in the heart language. That's the language you either learn first or learn the best in your home growing up. My first call was to Canada, and I was a part-time pastor and missionary at large. I had a distant preaching station in Manitowoc, my last station before coming home. It was a 400-mile trip every day on a Sunday. We talked about how important it is to bring the gospel to people in their heart language. Afterwards, Aya Raybach stands up. She's a librarian at an English-speaking library. She's married to Gunnar. They raised their family in Canada. She speaks English almost without an accent. You would think it was a Canadian accent. She said to me afterwards, Pastor, when I hear, read, or say the Lord's Prayer in my Latvian language, it still means more to me than it does in English. And that's why we put it into the heart language. All right, we've got brochures on the table. You can look at like estate planning, endowment fund, tribute cards, recurring gift program. Of course, you can use the bulletin and the bulletin insert. You can put us in your budget. We have, look for this one. You can scan this. You can find a project for your ladies group or your youth group to support by scanning that QR code. That's on the table. Thrivent Choice dollars can be designated towards us. If you can do nothing else, pray for this work, just like you would for any missionary. All right, I've already said this, we're an RSO of Synod. We're not in the Missouri Synod budget. I've got one last slide I'm going to stop on, and we're going to do the yellow cards. Bing, bing, bing. You said 10 o'clock, right, Pastor? Okay. This will be my final story. Right now, I'll take questions. Right now, if you fill the yellow card out, we'll collect them up in about a minute or two, and we'll do the drawing. We can probably hit the lights if anyone needs that. What are your questions or comments?
You had a slide about Nigeria and so many millions of Lutherans over there.
Yep.
Are they being affected by this Christian kidnapping stuff?
I do not know, but I do know that the bulk of the church is in the southeast. It's around a town called Uyo. I went there to teach at their seminary. They're not up there close to that. You saw that line that the news puts on the slides they show. The majority of them are not up there in the Islamic zone. But that was always a concern for the brief 2 weeks we were there. I've not heard from anyone in our church body that it's impacted the Lutheran Church of Nigeria directly. It's possible. Back there, sir, you had a question.
Yes, 2 questions actually. Do we have other Lutheran denominations helping out on this, or maybe reaching out to them? Because do they have the same small catechism? And what name?
We are the only Lutheran one in the United States. It just so happens that we are helping Canada form a Lutheran Heritage Foundation in Canada. It will be a self-sustained, separate entity from us. So in that sense, there will be another church body, and they will probably be we're an RSO of the Missouri Synod. They will be an RSO of the Lutheran Church of Canada, who broke off back in about 1987 from us and formed their own autonomous church body. That's the only one I know of that's Lutheran to date. What's your second question?
Is there any action towards Europe where it's starting to become illegal to evangelize and Islam is allowed to evangelize, but we're not?
We're providing books in Europe. I have a close friend of mine who was with me in the Army. I'm not going to give you his name. He lives in Norway. He's married to a Norwegian woman. He teaches church history at a university. He's a pastor. He was an Army chaplain. And I'm working with him right now. They are finally getting the catechism with explanation published for Norway in a couple different dialects. For years, they've had just the catechism. Now they're getting it with explanation, with all the questions and answers to be used as a teaching tool. So that's one I can speak to directly. But yes, there are countries in Europe that are working with us, and we are providing some books to West and Eastern Europe. Other questions? Ma'am? Usually by the time we get there, they're doing pretty good. They have a national language, and in many cases, they're now teaching the indigenous languages in the schools. At least in Sierra Leone, they were. They were teaching Mende, Temne, and Limba, which I had worked among. Okay, we need to collect up the yellow cards, folks, so we keep to our timeline. If I can have, yeah. And we'll do the drawing quick. Okay. Okay, here goes. Pastor, you over there? Disappearing me? I'm going to have you pick a number. Let's see how many cards we got here. Looks like we've got, okay. All right. Pick a number between 13 and 25. Yep. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Okay, first prize, with your choice, is N, I assume is the first name, Jean. Who would that be? The last name, G-U-S-K-E.
She's a choir practice.
Oh. Okay.
I've got to be present to win.
Yeah. We want to do? If she can do it, yeah, sure. Most people end up, even grandparents, picking this one, and then they give it to their grandchildren or something. We'll be fast here. I've had this happen before.
It's okay.
Any questions while we're waiting?
Yeah, we're not going to hold you to the exact.
Okay.
Pastor goes over all the time.
You can, yes, for the next round, you can include it. So this one is really good. I'll tell you this story while we're waiting. If she walks in, we'll wrap up the story. When I was a pastor at Mount Calvary in Richfield, I had a young lady start coming to my church. If she walks in, I'll stop the story. And she was from a very big country, a very close country, very far away. She was there. Okay, ma'am? Which one? You got it. And you get a choice of one of these. Okay. Now let's go for second prize. Can you pick a number between 15, and 30. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Second prize is Debbie Bunkowski. Okay, and your choice of one of those purses.
This is fishy, Pastor. You know, they're both from the same table over there.
It's ironic. Now,
Jeannie, I would never think.
you can get this book for $10. I think that's the total price online at our website. It is technically for free, but if you pay the $10, it helps cover postage and publishing. And this is a very reasonable book to get. Let's wrap it up. Okay, so this is another reason why I believe in the work that we're doing. One day she stopped me after church and says, I'd like to learn more about infant baptism. She was an evangelical from a church in this country she came from. I said, okay. She leaves. I go, now what do I do? Where's that green book at? Someone got it? Who's got the green book that I passed around? Over here. I called Lutheran Heritage Foundation. They said, we have just the book for you. And here is the book. It's in her language and it's in English. We sat down to study it. When we were done studying it, she said to me, Pastor, two things. First of all, we don't get these kinds of books where I come from. Second of all, we don't get this kind of teaching. So she was very impressed. We gave her a copy of the book. We hope it made it through customs or whatever and made it home with her. Folks, I thank you for your time. I thank you for your attention. I thank you for your interest. This concludes the presentation. God bless. You want to do third prize? Okay. Then you get to pick a number between 1 and 15. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Third prize is Allison Moldenhauer. And let's see. You don't have much of a choice in the book. Sometimes people put this in the church library, but you can come over here and grab one of these purses. Folks, that concludes the presentation. God's blessings.